Hi, my name is Ashley, and in this video I'm going to show you how to add a really simple flow file notification. This notification can go to someone like your business owner, an IT support desk, or someone that is likely to be looking after the flow files for this process. This is great as it's instant, so it will send the email as soon as the flow has failed, and it's not like the Microsoft ones which normally go to the owner or a specified admin. So just going to click into Edit, into my flow, and we're going to jump into adding a flow file notification. So at the moment this is just a very basic flow that I've got, and what we're going to do is go to the bottom of the flow. So we're going to add an action, and what we're going to add first is a scope. So we add a scope so that we can add lots of different actions if you need them for a flow file. So you could do things like monitoring flow files in a list, sending emails, or completing different actions if any of the actions above in your flow process have failed. So I've added a scope, and then what we're going to do is add the email. So I personally like adding a compose action. I like using HTML for my email body, so I use a compose to hold the HTML, which will then be used in the body. So I'll add a title, so I'm going to call this email body just so that I know that this compose is holding that. And then what I've got here is just some standard text that I use for most flows, so I'll put that in the inputs here. And now I'm just going to go through and add my expressions, which will tell the user the flow name, the date and that the flow failed, and then a link to the actual flow history run of the one that failed. So I'll just cut that part there, and I'm going to put that into an expression. So what this expression is doing is giving you the flow name. So I'll add that in there, and we're saying the workflow, and then it will say the flow name has failed. And then I want to convert UTC to New Zealand date and time. So I'll put that in the expression and select add. So it's saying the workflow will say the flow name has failed at this date. And then I want to add a link which will take the user who receives the email directly to the flow run history. So I'll go and copy my concat expression and paste that into an expression here. So that's going to say click here to view the flow run history for the user to select. So I'll just save that. And then now we want to add our email. So I'll add an action in the scope under the compose, and we're going to search for send an email. So I'll just select send an email version 2. So again, we'll rename it and we'll send this to a business owner. At the moment that will just be myself. And we'll give it a subject, so I'll just say flow fail notification. And I might put the flow name here as well. I could use the expression, but I'll just copy and paste. And then in the body, we want to go and find that dynamic content of the output from the compose email body. So now I can push save. So we've got the scope, we've got our email body, and we've got the email. So now what we want to do is actually configure the scope to only run if any of the actions above have failed. So I'm going to select the scope, which includes our email, and I'm going to push settings. And then so you see here we've got run after, and then we've got some select actions, and at the moment by default it says the do until, because the do until is before the scope. So I'm going to expand that, and we can see that at the moment it is successful, but we want to change that. So we want our email to send if the do until has timed out, skipped, or failed. And then we're going to untick as successful, because we don't want to receive an email if that is successful. So then I'm going to publish that, and we have a working flow file notification. So I've actually configured this flow to fail. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back, and I'm going to run this flow. I'm just going to add connections that I've added into the flow. I'll select an ID of ID1, so this is just selecting a SharePoint list item with the ID of 1, and I know that exists. So I'm going to select Run Flow and Done, and then we're going to click into it. And we can see that my initialized variable action has failed, and it skipped right to my scope. So it's composed the email and sent an email to the business owner. So what we can do is jump to my Outlook and have a look at the email. So we can see the flow fail notification for my flow, and it's got the date and the time, and we can click to view the flow run history. Perfect. Now there's one thing that we can do to improve this even more. So if I just go into Edit and go into my scope, what I'm going to add here is a Terminate action. And what I want this to do is just show that the flow has actually failed, because obviously that showed that the flow still ran successfully because it ran the actions that we'd configured to run, but we want to show that the status has failed. So I'll publish that and we'll run a test. And what we can see here is the flow has gone through its steps, it's failed, and it's also gone through the scope. So here I'm getting my error of my flow fail, and if we just go back, we'll also see that the fail shows in our status. And that's the end. Thank you.